my name is ZacharyGerber, and I'm a master's student in the University of Arizona's Masters of Science GIST program. And today I will be sharing the results of my research project, which was a retrospective land cover analysis of deforestation in Flagstaff, Arizona, using unsupervised classification methods on Landsat surface reflectance imagery. Before diving into the research, I'd first like to provide a little bit of background info on why I chose this topic. According to the 2010 US Census Bureau, in 2010, 80.7% of the US population lived in an urban setting. As you can see, this trend has continued since then. And moreover, this phenomenon is occurring across the US. What we have here is between 2010 and 2020, the population of US metro areas grew by 9%, while the population of US micro areas grew by 1%. All metro and micro areas in Puerto Rico lost population during that period. Pictured here is the study area extent overlaid onto a slope raster generated from a Landsat 8 surface reflectance scene, which was obtained in 2022. The area surrounding Flagstaff, Arizona is interspersed with tracts of urban development, as well as a diverse population of juniper, spruce, pine, fir, oak, and aspen trees. In recent years, more forest and grassland areas have been removed to make room for further urban development. The expected rise in the US population will not only demand more land for urban housing, but it will drive deforestation through secondary means, such as increased consumption due to an urban lifestyle. My project goals for this project aim to demonstrate that it is feasible to obtain urbanization and deforestation rates using 30-meter resolution Landsat surface reflectance imagery in conjunction with an unsupervised isocluster classification technique. Moreover, this project aims to demonstrate that this technique yields results that have a high degree of accuracy. As an aside, global and local land cover classifications do exist, such as the USGS AROS Archive of Land Cover Products, which is a global land cover database derived between the years 1992 and 1993. However, their scope is limited and it might not cover the desired region or timescale. This means that it cannot be relied upon for quick analysis or analyses over specific periods of time. One data set from between March and May of each calendar year from 2000 through 2022 was used in this analysis. These data sets were acquired for use in classification and were from the Earth Explorer, USGS, AROS, Landsat 8, OLI, TIERS collection, level 2 scenes. And that was for the years 2022 back through 2013. And Landsat 5 TM collection 2 level 2 scenes were used for the years 2012 back through 2000. In addition to these data sets, Google Earth Pro historical imagery was used to aid me in ground truthing the classification validation sites. Here I have pictured a high-level overview of the methodology and flow used in this project. The series of models that I built in ArcGIS Model Builder automated the process of clipping the images to the study area, classifying the images using the unsupervised isocluster classifier method, assessing the accuracy of the classifier with the aid of confusion matrices, and detecting the changes in pixels using the continuous change detection and classification method. Pictured here are color composites of the Landsat 5 TM bands for the scene selected for the year 2000. All images were captured during the same time of the year between the months of March and May. And for each scene, all individual band raster images were combined into one raster composite for each collection of images. As far as methods for the land use and land cover interpretation and classification, the classification was performed for all images using the unsupervised ISO cluster classification technique, which generated an Esri classifier definition file. What's pictured here is the diagram of the ArcGIS Pro model builder model for scene processing, which included the tools composite bands, clip raster, train ISO cluster classifier, classification and filtering, apologies, for scene year 2000. This model was also used for each subsequent year in the study as well. The classifier used was the ISO cluster classifier with parameters of a maximum number of samples per class set to 1,000. The majority filter tool was then run on each classification with a queen weight scheme, number of neighbors equal to 8, and the replacement threshold set to majority in order to help smooth out the class members. And using the original natural color raster images in conjunction with Google Earth Pro, historical high resolution satellite imagery, ground truth data was assessed for each validation site for each classification. And after classifying the images for each year and evaluating the accuracy of the classifications, change detection was performed on these classified raster images between each preceding year and subsequent year. For results, all classifications that were run provided classifications with minimal class fragmentation, and the classes identified seemed to adhere quite well to the known topography of the area. Pictured here is a comparison of the natural color multiband image from 2022 to the land use land cover ISO cluster classification of that multiband image. And as you can see, the forest areas do seem to adhere to the topography pretty well as the urban or built up land in gray. However, for some years, the ISO cluster classification definition used in this study did not perform similarly well, as is pictured here. This appears to be mainly due to the presence of moisture across the study area when the image was captured. I believe this resulted in the classifier being unable to differentiate between bare ground and built up land and urban because the pooling of water and wet soil, the classifier kind of noticed the similarities between those two and misclassified them as the same class. And that this misclassification is also apparent in the confusion matrices generated from the ground truth data review that I performed. So here we have the kappa values for each year across the study. Overall, the classification model had substantial agreement when averaged across all classifications produced with a kappa value of 0.769. Recall and precision were also fairly strong across all of the classes and classifications. However, the urban built up land and bare earth classes were the most commonly misclassified, typically being misinterpreted by the classifier as one another. And while the results of the classification method were not consistently reliable across all years in the study, a time series view pictured here does reveal the overall trend of a decrease in forest class pixels in favor of bare earth and urban or built up land pixels. The land cover change analysis did reveal that a significant portion of Flagstaff and the surrounding area were deforested for further urbanization of Flagstaff. Pictured here is a land cover change detection map showing the land use land cover class changes from forest pixels to urban pixels as compared between the years 2000 and 2022. Analysis of the resulting change detection raster dataset reveals that 17,746 pixels over the study area surveyed were converted from forest to urban between the years 2000 and 2022. This means that approximately 3,946 acres of forest were lost to urban development, which equates to a 15.44% loss in forest acreage during this time period due to urban development specifically. Discussion of the results. The advantage of the isocluster classification approach, in my opinion, lies in its straightforward machine learning approach that requires minimal human supervision. This made it the ideal candidate for evaluating such a large data set with 20 scenes in total. One benefit of unsupervised ArcGIS Pro classification methods is that these machine-based classifiers can remain more objective in their interpretation of the land cover types and more independent than supervised classification methods that do require human interpretation. This study also shows that the isocluster method is a reliable method for classifying diverse landscapes. This study accounts for only loss of forest due to development directly surrounding the city of Flagstaff. However, there is likely more forest loss in the areas outside the city limits, such as the neighborhoods of Belmont or City of William, Donny Park, and other areas surrounding Flagstaff. In addition, there was also forest loss that was accounted for in this area due to wildfires over the time period. And this was mostly seen around areas that had seen fires in recent years, such as near the I-40 and the recent Schultz fire. However, there are several concerns to be raised and investigated regarding the accuracy of the classification used for this change analysis. There were a few years for which an accurate classification could not be produced using this method. In these cases, large portions of the bare earth class were misclassified as urban or built up land. This means that a meaningful comparison between those years and prior or subsequent years cannot be made without high degree of uncertainty in the interpretation of the results. However, the data sets in which this occurred did have large amounts of wet soil and moisture present across the study area. The classifier algorithm likely detected this and noticed similarities between the wet soil and water on the concrete and cement. So one approach that I researched to preventing this misclassification could be to calculate the NDVI for potential data sets or scenes prior to including them in the study, and looking for alternative raster images of the study area and time period if the NDVI value is too low, which would indicate high moisture level. And that could potentially be automated using something like Google Earth Engine to help speed up the scene selection process. Another concern to note is that not all Landsat scenes are equally appropriate for use due to constraints and caveats for some of the data sets provided. And the USGS Landsat mission site notes, site does note important criteria to consider when selecting your scenes. So that's just one thing to keep in mind when using this method as well. With ample time to fine tune an unsupervised classification method to an individual raster image, you could produce highly accurate classifications. However, it seems unlikely that an individual unsupervised classification method could yield highly accurate classifications for more than one raster image without additional time for scene selection and or more conservative selection criteria. A more accurate, albeit lengthier approach for this problem might simply be to use a more involved classification method, such as a support vector machine method or other supervised learning methods for your classification. Alternatively, one adjustment to this method might be the addition of panchromatic bands, as was demonstrated in a similar study published by Gilbertson et al. In 2017, including the panchromatic bands with the other Landsat bands could increase the accuracy of the image via the pan sharpening method. In conclusion, the land use land cover maps developed in this project aim to provide a picture of the progression of urban development and deforestation in the greater Flagstaff region of northern Arizona. In addition, despite the noted concerns, the method laid forth in this paper did perform reasonably well with detecting significant surface reflectance signatures. And the unsupervised isocluster classification method is a good approach to use for semi-automated land cover analysis in order to gauge general trends. And the present study shows that there has been significant forest loss in this area, fueled in part by increasing urbanization. That's all I had. Thank you so much for your time today. And I wanted to open it up to any questions.